Putin would have a lot more trouble staying in power if he started to take the sons of the elite into the military and sending them into the meat grinder. Foreigners bring a very distinct skill set to the equation, in some ways more effective than a standard Russian unit is just kind of thrown into things with just a couple of days training. From Russia's standpoint, they must conquer Ukraine completely. They tried this back in 2022, I believe, this summer, September of 2022. Wow, it's been going on this long. And there's always been this deal between the Russian people and their government. Do whatever you want on the world stage, but don't touch our kids. And I think that Putin would have a lot more trouble staying in power if he started to take the sons of the elite into the military and sending them into the meat grinder. Right now, a lot of people who are volunteering are foreigners, or they are people who are poor, people who are in prison. And if you're in prison and one of your options is to go to war and get money, all right, that might not seem like a bad deal. So yes, it's very difficult for Russia to recruit right now. It's getting harder for Russia to recruit, but they're not at the bottom of the barrel yet. And there is always a chance of just raising those recruitment bonuses in order to find more people who are willing to take that chance. Yes and no. Russia can try to change their tactics in the sense that they may switch to more unmanned vehicles. They may also choose to bombard Ukraine from the air and just try to keep up with that. Also use disinformation to get NATO countries to argue with each other to stop supporting Ukraine, because really the reason Ukraine hasn't been able to fight back so effectively is that it has a lot of NATO backing. So Russia has shown itself capable of making changes. They used to use tanks and frontal assaults. And then they decided, you know what, this isn't working, so let's use motorbikes to try to cross no man's land. And when that wasn't working, they decided to use 2 or 3 man teams to try to infiltrate. And once that is obvious it's not working, they will do something else. So I don't necessarily think that a new tactic would involve mobilization. It would just be Russia responding to what Ukraine is doing and improvising and coming up with other ways of infiltrating and gaining ground. Relatively recently, Russia said that they were going to stop recruiting from Cuba and Colombia. Cuba, that might be kind of obvious because there's essentially no flights out of the island because there's no place for airplanes to get fuel. Colombia is kind of interesting because Ukraine allows Colombians to join its international legion, and Russia allows Colombians to join their forces. So there's just some Colombians that are some of the best light infantry in the world, and they like to fight, and they know how to do it, and they're good at it. And some of them are going to go where the money is to be made. So foreigners bring a very distinct skill set to the equation, especially foreigners who have served in foreign militaries before. And those units might be in some ways more effective than a standard Russian unit is just kind of thrown into things with just a couple of days training. Although the current operational environment, just about anybody can be killed by a drone overhead, whether you have 20 years of good training or not. So there are a couple of more options. The first is just to kind of freeze the line of contact and then use missiles, drones, and bombs, as well as information warfare against the West in order to break up the West's unification behind Ukraine. The fact is that as long as Putin is in power, he still has options, because he's kind of looking at the battlefield right now and saying, you know what, if I decide, all right, I'm going to pull my troops out of Ukraine, then I lose. But as long as I have troops out the battlefield, I still have a chance of getting some kind of breakthrough, of political fortunes falling into my favor. Zelensky could die of a heart attack tomorrow. Then what happens? Well, you might have a leader of Ukraine who is not as steadfast. So for every day that Russia kind of hangs on, there is another opportunity that they are likely to exploit. Of course, that also goes for Ukraine. For every day that Russia sits on the line of contact, not really making any gains, that's another day for Ukraine to start individually destroying troops. It's another day for Ukraine to make holding Crimea even harder. It's another day for fuel prices to rise in Russia and make it very difficult for people to look at their government and say, you know what, I think having Putin in charge is a good idea. I don't know about a mass exodus. I'm sure Russia has some controls over that. Anybody who's wanted to leave is likely gone. If Putin decides, you know what, we need a mass mobilization, one of the things he's going to have to do is kind of get permission from the oligarchs, because once you start robbing Peter to pay Paul, you have this problem where you're taking people from jobs that are necessary to run the economy. Could be software positions, could be manufacturing positions, and now you're throwing them into the army where you're just going to send them to the front and get killed. And so you might be sacrificing the future of Russia for an immediate need right now, when it could just be easier to go get another 10,000 North Koreans. I don't really see Putin going into peace talks unless he's somehow forced into it. The whole idea behind taking Ukraine is it's either all or nothing. You have to have all of it. Because Russia's always felt they have this massive land border. I want to say, I think it's around 1,600 miles. I don't know what that is in kilometers. And that is, for the most part, undefensible. There's no large mountains until you hit the Urals. There's no large rivers. So in order for Russia to feel secure, they must take Ukraine, and then afterwards they must take the Baltics and Poland. And that takes a 1,600 mile border, and it shrinks it down to like 150, a little bit less than 150 miles. So you take that giant land border, you squish it down to very, very little that you have to defend, you feel a lot more comfortable. Now, the Poles might have something to say about that. I've been to Estonia. The Estonians might too. But I can tell you that from Russia's standpoint, they must conquer Ukraine completely. And so I don't really see peace talks the way we think of peace talks, where you get something, I get something. To Russia, it's a zero-sum game. It is all or nothing. I mean, in any kind of conflict, when you have an adversary that can punch back, you're going to encounter those deep strikes in your rear. And I mean, it's not like the Ukrainians are throwing drones into apartment buildings. Drones have a dollar value associated with them, and there's not a lot of military advantage to hitting an apartment building. But hitting these oil facilities, it does a couple of things. Number one, it increases the price of oil. Yeah, that's a good thing for Russia. It increases the cost, I should say, to the Russian consumer for oil and gasoline. Second thing it does is it creates a parts shortage. So one of the big issues in Russia right now is CNC machines. There's a limited number of computer numeric control CNC machines from like Siemens or other Western companies. And if you own a machine shop, well, you just got an order from the government to produce parts for a tank. So you start making those parts. Then an oil refinery comes to you and says, "Hey, I need you to CNC this valve." Well, now you say, "All right, well, you have to wait, or if you pay me more money, I'll put this other order on hold and take your order." And now, so the cost of everything else goes up. And you add into that how CNC machines are a limiting factor. Russia essentially can only work the CNC machines it had 4 years ago. And these things haven't had a software update in 4 years, because if I'm a cybersecurity guy, I want nothing more as a hacker to have Russia download the most recent patch for my Siemens CNC machine. Because if I'm a Western government, oh boy, I can have all sorts of fun with that one, right? I'll get on all sorts of networks. So these machines haven't been patched in 4 years, and there's a limited number of them. And for every part that you're manufacturing for an oil field is one less part you can make for a tank or a missile or a jet engine. So I think that's kind of the Ukrainian tactic there. It's you drop enough drones onto Moscow, it makes it a lot harder to repair that infrastructure. The cost of conducting this conflict goes way up for Russia. Crimea is a very interesting situation because Ukraine has taken what was Russia's prized possession, this amazing port on the Black Sea, and they turned it into a millstone around the neck of Putin. Because Crimea is close enough to use short and medium range drones, yet it still has a population that needs to be fed, that needs gas, that needs electricity. And now Crimea has essentially none of those things. And Russia has to deal with an entire population in Crimea that wants nothing more than to get out.